I don't want to forget to do that. Let's see.
Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we will get started in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning for our discussion on returning to the workplace. I'm Julia Lothrop, Executive Officer with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and I'm honored to be the chair of the DFW FEB this year. Many of you may remember that in May 2020, near the beginning of the pandemic, the DFW FEB organized a session so federal agencies could share information and learn from one another about steps being taken to keep employees safe, understand the virus, increase sanitation in the buildings, serve the public virtually, understand social distancing, and work through potential IT teleworking kinks. It was a very informative session, and we think today's session will be also. So this pandemic has been quite a journey for everyone, and many things have changed, and we're eager to hear about changes from your agency's perspective, and we are so glad that you could join us today. I want to recognize G.C. Breezy, the FEB Vice Chair, and thank GSA for their ongoing support of the FEB. Thank you, too, to our FEB board members, committee chairs, and members for your invaluable work to keep us informed, trained, and prepared for the important work that we all do. You all may know that HHS is the host for the Dallas-Fort Worth FEB. Unfortunately, my boss, Seema Lajavardian, the regional director for HHS, has another commitment, but she sends her best wishes to everybody. So it's really astounding to think that many of us have been teleworking for 2 years. Through it all, federal employees didn't miss a beat and faithfully continued their work either in the office as frontline employees like the Federal Protective Service, FAA air traffic controllers, VA and Bureau of Prisons, healthcare workers, FEMA and HHS ASPR employees who deployed for hurricane and disaster assistance. Many commissioned Corps officers were deployed to assist with the pandemic by providing screenings at airports, assisting cruise passengers at quarantine locations way back when, and working at COVID-19 public testing sites. Some federal employees selflessly volunteered during the pandemic to assist at unaccompanied migrant children's shelters. So we commend you for your perseverance, your dedication, and commitment to your jobs and the American people. We recognize that personally, for many, the pandemic has been heart-wrenching and stressful. Many contracted the virus or had family members pass away. Parents juggled school assignments while working or kept small children when daycares closed. Others struggled with the inability to see a loved one in a nursing home. In some cases, social distancing, worry, and stress caused anxiety, depression, and other behavioral health issues within families. Captain Masudi with HHS will be sharing some helpful coping strategies, coping resources today for all of you. So coming back to the office will be an adjustment. It takes a while to settle in, but the chance to share a smile and conversations, collaborate, and tell personal stories will bring new energies and creativity to the work that we do every day for the American people. Thank you again for all that you do. So Kelly Anderson, our FEB Executive Director, had an unexpected priority today and can't join us. Now I'm thrilled to turn the program over to Crystal Cherry, who will moderate our session today. She is the phenomenal communications director for the DFW FEB. We're so fortunate to have her. She's been on detail for the last year and is doing a fantastic job assisting our executive director. So Crystal, if you can introduce our panel members, we'll get this program kicked off and just take it away. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julia. And thank you everyone for joining us today. As Julia stated, I'm Crystal Cherry, Communications Director for the DFW Federal Executive Board. And again, thank you all for joining. So we do have a very full agenda, so without delay, Let's get started. The first panelist is Randy Michelle, Federal Preparedness Coordinator, Director, National Preparedness for FEMA Region 6. Randy will be discussing agency preparedness, followed by John Carlo, Regional Commissioner, General Services Administration Region 7, and also DFW FEB Vice Chair. Rob Russell, he couldn't be with us today, so Chief Ricardo Gonzalez will provide comments on behalf of CISA. Then David L. Olson, Assistant Director, Field Operations for the Federal Protective Service. Some of you may not have met Mr. Olson. He is the Assistant Director, Field Operations, the position previously held by Patrick Moses. Tom Tiarina, Office of the Regional Commissioner, Social Security Administration, and Captain Mayron Masudi, Regional Health Administrator, Region 6 Health and Human Services. Finally, our FEB Chair, Julia Lothar, will add a few comments about the recently issued Executive Order EO 14043 and will adjourn the session. We will ask for a couple of questions after each panelist have presented. And then you may come off mute and ask your question. And then immediately after the question is answered, we'll move on to the next panelist. So at this time, I will turn it over to Randy Michelle, FEMA Region 6. Randy?
Hey, thank you, ma'am. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Can I get maybe a thumbs up or let's see, 1, 2, okay, 3. We'll call it official. Thanks for the opportunity to do this on behalf of my senior executive, Mr. Tony Robinson, who many of you know very, very well. Thank you for the opportunity and the invitation. We always look forward to continuing the partnership with the family of the DFW Federal Executive Board. So on the topic of return to workplace, really got us thinking about, that's very akin to the term reconstitution, those in the continuity space, if you will, which I think the FEBs, not only in Dallas, but around the nation, spend a lot of time thinking about continuity, resiliency, and preparedness from that lens and that framing. Very quickly get into this notion of reconstitution. Inside that continuity space industry, there really is some debate on whether or not, was the pandemic actually, or is the pandemic actually a continuity event? So there's a lot of senior folks, a lot of tenured folks debating that and arguing that. I don't want to get into that today, but I will tell you without a doubt, there are similarities, there are semblances, and there are tactics and techniques, if nothing else, things that can provoke our thoughts on where do we go from here. So I think the first thing to do, and what I've been doing lately when I've had the opportunity to speak with partners or in the general public, is just start with two pieces of what I call ancient wisdom. The first one is everyone on here has probably heard something along these lines, maybe even heard the direct quote, but seek first to understand. I typically ask folks who I'm speaking to, how many of you have heard that or heard something very similar to that? And almost 90% or 100% of the audience will raise their hand. Absolutely, I've heard that before. And so I think it washes over folks and hits them, in very personal ways and causes them to reflect on what does that actually mean? For me, in this context, it's we have an opportunity. So thank you to the Dallas Federal Executive Board, DFW Federal Executive Board, for having us take a knee, for having us to come together, say, time out, where are we with this thing? As we were kicking off, we were talking about when we first had this session well over a year ago, and kind of what our focus was then. But as we seek first to understand, I think we all realize, and again, in our opening comments, the world has changed greatly. So we're returning to the workplace, we're returning to the work environment, we're returning to this notion of continuing on with our essential functions, our business lines, after having gone through something that, quite frankly, is unprecedented. From a FEMA disaster management perspective, COVID-19, the pandemic, will wind up being the most expensive disaster in the history of FEMA's history and potentially our nation. Every state in the nation, every territory received either an emergency or major disaster declaration from the president. Those disasters remain open. Statutory funding for authorizations of funds, appropriations of funds to offset costs and impacts of those disasters is still ongoing and will continue to be so for some time. So it's important that we take the knee, as we're doing in this meeting, we take the time out, we catch our breath and say, where are we? What's changed? And it's important to kind of reflect on that as a team. Which brings me to my next point. It takes a village. We've heard that. So first, let me say, in terms of attribution, obviously Seek First to Understand is not original by me in any case or any stretch. I think some folks will say the two main points I'm making here have even maybe biblical connotation or references. Certainly very, very ancient in the wisdom that they represent. So Seek First to Understand, some say, is actually originally attributed to St. Francis in his prayer of let me be understood and then let me understand. That I've heard probably is the deepest origin that I could find in research. And in terms of it takes a village, typically that's reframed, and it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to allow us to be better, to get along. In other words, it's very seldom is it just one person in our own walk that gets through the challenging times. So in emergency management, we hear that framed as we're better together. It takes the entire team. We've seen this framed many, many times. I think this is basically attributed to some African cultures where it really takes a village to raise a child is really the framing and reference on that. So the same thing applies in emergency management here. We're better together. The federal executive boards absolutely embody that spirit, represent that, us coming together as a team. So learning from each other. So thank you again for the opportunity. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to focus kind of on our reconstitution aspects of continuity and resiliency and preparedness, essentially returning to normal or a new normal. I think we're trying to define what does that look like for us across the entire federal government, across the private sector, across, quite frankly, private citizenry. How are their lives changed after going through what we've been through over the last couple of years? In terms of the federal government, we have to think about really a couple of different pieces as we think about reconstitution. That's going to impact our people, our staff, our teammates. It's going to impact our facilities. Those were discussed in opening comments. It's absolutely going to talk about our touch communications, which I will touch more on. And I'm going to leave the people part and the facilities part to some of our other speakers. And ultimately, these things are going to impact how are we going to make resource decisions differently? Are we going to buy more of a thing because we realize that's a lesson learned issue from COVID? Are we going to do less of a thing? Are we going to completely zero out the things? Our travel budget's impacted, or undoubtedly our facilities, our communications budget should be impacted. And I'll talk about why here in just a minute. But first, let's talk about kind of reorganizing our thoughts. That's why taking this knee or taking this time out is so important. If we think about, are we organized correctly for this new state or this new sense of what we're going to call normal, or just the newness of where we are? Are we organized correctly? Do we have the right level of leadership? Do we have the right level of governance in place? It's something I think we should take a look at. Very, very rapidly in keeping consistent with FEMA thinking and continuity. What did we learn, or how are our essential functions impacted? Right? So we got to have our folks, but every one of us would have different essential functions if we get around robin and said, okay, GSA, what are your essential functions? FEMA, what are yours? HHS, what are yours? We would have articulated very important things, but they all would have been slightly different to our agency's missions. We need to reflect on those. We've gone through an unprecedented time, and I will tell you there are underpinning programs, underpinning techniques, there are underpinning tasks or activities that will cause us, while the essential function remains the same, but will cause us to approach those in a different way. The obvious one in the room is telework. We've been teleworking for 2 years. FEMA, before the pandemic, had a telework program. I would say we probably hovered in the 15, maybe 20 percentile of the staff took advantage of that program, maybe higher, but if I'm just using the regional office as a gauge. And the amount of time they telework is probably the biggest thing that has changed and will change as we move forward. And let me just clear up for a second. Everyone had an emergency telework form or process in place. If severe weather, offices closed, we had that telework ability. But the folks actually using telework before pandemic was extremely low compared to where we are now. We've adopted policies at FEMA. I know that was a question in the opening comments, whereby individuals are required to be in the office 2 days per pay period. And we take that from higher authority, even above FEMA. We take that criteria from OPM authority and how we're inferencing and interpreting those regulations and those requirements. And what we're seeing is senior leadership down to division directors, down to branch chief level. That's kind of the left and right limit. So most folks are taking advantage of the 2 days per pay period, not 2 days per week in the office. And then the rest of the time they are teleworking as allowed. So that's a great example, I think, of how things at the people impact level, at the policy impact level, what we've learned, what's changed, and what's going to help define our new normal. There's going to be a whole lot less of us in the office at any one time. Obviously, there will be a mission need, an important meeting, something that causes us to assemble in greater numbers on a given day, but that will be the exception and certainly not the rule anymore. So before, I might have 30 people in my office on any given day. Mine is a compressed work schedule or an alternative work schedule. On a Friday, let's say, most folks pick that day as their day. And I might have 20 plus folks out of a 30 plus person division in the office on a given day. Now it's down to 4 or 5 people in an entire division not being in the office at the same time. And that's pretty consistent. So just an example of what is impacted over at the FEMA side of things in the Region 6 office in Denton. And I'm sure many of you are mirroring something very, very close to what the example was that I just provided. But it's important to reflect on those things. I will say our essential functions were able to carry on regardless of the COVID impacts. We were able to respond to disasters. We were able to continue continuity and not only respond, but then handle up on our programs and our authorities for recovery as well. So that kind of rounds us out there. Whatever these new things are, these new telework policies, procedures, as those impact subordinate to your essential functions, it's important to codify those things. We have to get these things down in terms of procedures at a minimum. Most importantly, probably archiving them or updating them in terms of policies, getting our new approach, our new framing, our new authorities written down in a way that, yes, it's on paper and everyone understands how those policies and practices and procedures are shaping the new environment. Moving on, other considerations. I'll be honest with you. It's kind of ironic. We had this today. Just yesterday, we had a service animal, canine, that was at our location, just to kind of handle, the psychological and any kind of physical impacts that folks were dealing with in returning to the physical environment. Most throughout the pandemic did not. There were a few of us that kind of continued on with a couple of days a week in the office, being highly separated from each other and maintaining massive physical distancing. But those are things that I think we have to look at in terms of services that we might call upon in the future, and examples of other ways this pandemic impacted us. Talked about reviewing our mission essential functions. Just a quick reminder, those are the things that are absolutely critical to your line of business, that must be done either by statute or regulation, and are things that are very, very unique to your organization. FEMA does not go investigate, and I'm being overly dramatic in my example here to make the point. We don't go investigate acts of terrorism. That's the Department of Justice and the FBI that do those kinds of things. What we do is respond to the nation's disasters, help folks recover, and we continue on with the executive level continuity requirements. So those are things that we're looking at right now, all three of those. How has it changed? How does the thing like telework impact us? Are we able to continue on and meet those missions? Those are things we need to be looking at right now. And I would say you would need to be going through the same thing in your agency. Also important is kind of chronicling what we learned. Why was it so few folks participated in the telework program? Was it a mindset? Was it a manager edict or requirement? Was it a stigma? But I think the pandemic has forced us to take on that leaner approach, that more distributed model that we see appearing in policy coming from the White House, the National Security Council, now in a mission resilience approach that we'll get deeper into as the administration evolves throughout its tenure. So looking forward to seeing that mission resilience piece grow and evolve. But going back to capturing what we learned from an after action perspective, getting those things down is absolutely critical. Did we have to deliver services in an innovative way? Did we capture that innovation anywhere? Again, going back to, did we capture that in policy or even procedures? Very, very important so that we don't lose that. Can we take those observations and get them into an improvement plan? That would be a goal. So that we can tick off and work against those and hold ourselves to account to achieving betterment and better effort, better service delivery across the board. Again, I'm going to allow some of the other speakers to talk deeper about the people impacts. I mentioned just a couple, really won't touch too much on facilities. Let me spend a little bit more time, maybe the bulk of the remaining of my time, around communications. So we have internal communications that we owe our teams. You know, how are we communicating those new policies? Everything to how are we maintaining daily accountability? You know, some managers get wrapped around the axle. Are my people actually giving a full day's work? You know, there is that mentality in the managerial and supervisory pool. There's others that I haven't talked to my folks in a few days. What's my normal rhythm? I should be checking in with them. If I don't see them in a building where I used to see them in a building, what is my new rhythm that I should be checking in with them? Should I plan additional check-in meetings? Something as simple as that. Too, oh my gosh, something's happened and I need to get the word out in a contingent or emergency type way. What system do I have a system? How am I doing that? I know CIS is on here. We've spent a tremendous amount of time with them really since January based on worldwide threat, worldwide goings on. Obviously, everyone on this call is very familiar with what's happening between Russia in the country of Ukraine right now. That's caused us as a government to really look even more deeply and work on what is our readiness and preparedness. What if? What does that look like for us? And forces us, quite frankly, at FEMA to focus on what are our primary communication systems? When's the last time we tested those? When's the last time we drilled on those? If those systems go down, what is our alternate? If those systems go down, what is our contingency? How are we getting the word out to our employees? How are we communicating with federal partners? What systems are we using? What techniques are we using? All the way down to none of these systems are working. And what are my actions on what we refer to as passive trigger? You know, I have no communication with higher authority or left and right partners, and I know for a fact something's going on. What action should I be taking without direction that are in a safe zone of not doing too much or indebting the government in a way I shouldn't be? What are the next steps I should be taking to make sure that I'm ready to handle up on my mission essential functions, whatever those are for your agency? So we put all that together. You guys have heard it through continuity for years, but your PACE environment, your PACE culture, or PACE plans. What I've been hearing a lot since January is we need to update our PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency communication plan. I'm not a big update my plan type fella. I am what is my PACE culture? You know, I'll hold this up. I just gave a talk in New Orleans last week. You know, 5 years ago, we had all been in the office environment, and our primary phone probably would have been, we'd have reached over and grabbed our Cisco or our Avaya phones, our VoIP phones, and held those up and said, well, this is my primary work phone. Today, I would submit to this group, I think this device is probably started to take over as our primary phone. It's with me almost 24/7, and gets a lot more usage than maybe that desk phone does when I'm only going in the office a couple of days a week. So that's a change. How does that change my pace environment, my pace thinking and doing? And how does that figure in? Ultimately, all these things, whether you're talking people, facilities, communications, physical impacts, psychological impacts, impact our resource decision making. So those are things that we're going to have to consider as we move forward. I know we are in our budgeting, spending more money here and a lot less over here. How am I reconciling all that? And how am I finding the new rhythm? Last thing I want to share with you, regardless of what topic, because what I do in preparedness, always try to find a way to come back to, let's remember, we're all human beings before we're anything else. And in that, whether I'm employed or I'm a private citizen or I'm a private sector owner and operator, if I'm a government official, there are some basic tried and true things we can do to make sure we're prepared at our office, at home, in church, at the movie theater, out to dinner, wherever we are. Simple things like making sure we're signed up for alerts and warnings on our smart devices that I was just showing a while ago on camera. Making sure we've had a conversation with our own family units or our work units about what is our plan. Continuity plans with this group, very sophisticated, but are we taking that home to our friends, to our families, to our loved ones? You know, what is our plan there on that level? The last piece, there's 12, I would just say as a result of this, just Google FEMA ready, 12 ways to prepare, or just Google FEMA 12 ways to prepare. You'll get a nice little 2-page card that's designed to just kind of be a thought provoker to get you thinking about what we could do with that individual at home unit level. The last thing I would share with you, most folks don't put on their calendar, well, it's been a quarter, so it's my time to call my insurance. Oh, Flo, you know, with the insurance agency we see on all the commercials. It's time to call Flo and have that conversation about, am I appropriately insured with all of my home wares, goods, all the things. The truth is most people in this nation are walking around either underinsured or not insured. And what do I mean by underinsured? Well, we probably added something to our household in the last year, 2 years, 3 years that maybe we didn't talk to our insurance agency about. That actually could be something of significant value, either monetary value, emotional value, that kind of a thing. So what are we doing with our insurance? Obviously in FEMA, we're very concerned about flood insurance. If you live on the planet Earth, it can flood anywhere. We've seen it flood in FEMA Region 6. A couple of years ago, climatologists and weather folk were referring to us as a flood corridor, which I'd not heard that reference in my entire career up until a couple of years ago. So that makes me want to say, take an inventory of those things in your house, talk to your insurance agency about it. Please, please, please consider flood insurance. It's the absolute best protection you can have. Getting that instead of waiting on FEMA assistance on the back end, the math and the payout greatly tilt to the favor of having a flood insurance policy. And I think I go on and on, but I know I have other panelists, so I probably need to yield time there and just pass off back to the moderator. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mr. Michel. Any questions for him? All right. Well, I guess we'll take it to GC, and you are next, and you have the floor.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Really appreciate you all organizing this as well and bringing us all together to kind of share our experiences and information. So extremely exciting time for all of us in government. I know that many of us never left the workplace during the last 2 years, and certainly appreciate and thank all those that have been coming in. On a daily basis, and handling our buildings, right? Buildings never sleep, never shut down during the pandemic. And so they've been going in, and I've been certainly appreciative of those individuals. The exciting part now is, though, we got into a state or a phase of the pandemic where the case counts are really low, and we're starting to see agencies return to the facilities. So we've kind of upped our presence from a GSA perspective to assist other agencies as they've been returning. We've taken a number of precautionary steps or preparatory steps for the agency's returns. And then we personally also have gone into a full reentry mode as well. And when I say full reentry, it's not quite the way we did it before the pandemic. So a contingency of employees are coming in on a daily basis, and a large part are coming in as needed or on a minimum of 2 days per pay period basis. So it's a little bit of a mix, which introduces kind of a hybrid environment in which we're operating. And it's been a transition for us, right? Just as we did before, when we were kind of before the pandemic operating in a certain manner, and then going into the full kind of pandemic, the majority of our employees were working from home. We learned and we adapted, and we're probably gonna have to go through that same kind of evolutionary process as we return and go into a hybrid. We're experimenting with new ways of using our technology to be able to best utilize this hybrid environment. We're gonna learn, we're gonna adapt, and apply those lessons moving forward. One thing is kind of exciting from a GSA perspective, just for everybody's awareness, is that we have an initiative called Workplace 2030, and we're envisioning what the workplace is going to be in the future. Part of that is from are people going to be at home? What equipment do they need to be able to work from home? Kind of a home office in a box, if you will. What technologies need to be in the workplace to facilitate a hybrid environment? And also, what does the new space need to look like and lay out? So we're developing kind of some pilots. We're going to be doing one here in Region 7 in Fort Worth. And once that's set up, we'll be able to demonstrate it to not only other GSA components, other regions, but also more importantly to our customers as they think about their space, any of those kind of things that they may want to adapt, whether it's going into a new lease or renovating their own existing space in their own portfolio. And so we're looking to assist and help out with agencies. Please reach out if you're kind of interested in learning more about it. More than happy to provide you the details and connect you with those individuals. Just some kind of general awareness of our facilities as you return. And I know not everybody operates or works in GSA facilities, so this is mostly applicable to those that do. One of the questions we get a lot from our customers is around cafeterias and gyms, fitness centers, whether those things are open. Predominantly, most of our cafeterias and fitness centers all shut down during the pandemic and closed. There were just not enough people going into the office buildings or those facilities to basically warrant the vendor continuing to operating. There was just not enough business to sustain operations. And certainly we don't want to put any of our vendors in a position that they're losing money. So most of those are closed. Hopefully here with agencies returning, there's more of an uptick in demand and hopefully they'll be able to reopen and attract vendors going into them. And the same thing with the fitness centers, which we are no longer allowed to operate or just have unattended. We need to work through a third-party vendor to operate. And again, there was not enough people going in to the facilities to warrant or drum up enough business to continue operating. Child care centers are still remaining open for us here in Region 7. We have one in the Terminal Annex in downtown Dallas. That's the only one here in the DFW area. And again, that's open and has been operating the whole time. There's other things, what we're doing too, as we all know, and I think most of you, I think there's only one exception with the Social Security Administration. Most agencies that I'm aware of are following CDC guidelines. We're doing the same within GSA. And for the DFW area, since we're considered low risk, that means that nobody's being required to wear masks. Please know that our building managers are looking at CDC guidelines and the data to understand whether we're a low, medium, or high risk facility and adjusting the signage in the buildings accordingly to the risk. So if you ever go into the building and it becomes high risk, at that point, there would be signage that would be put up indicating that you're supposed to be wearing a mask. One of the things that I stress to our folks is, look, even though a mask is not required, we do need to be respectful of others who may choose to wear a mask. It's not our place to ask why they're wearing a mask. That's their own personal business. And they may have health immune issues. They may have people that they're living at home with that are high risk, whatever the case might be. Again, not our place to ask. I know I was confronted with a situation where I went into a meeting and another individual was wearing a mask. My inclination was not to ask why they're wearing a mask, but ask, hey, I see you're wearing a mask. Would you like for me to wear one as well? It's just kind of human courtesy, being respectful of one another in the workplace. And it was not an inconvenience for me if they had asked me to do so, to go grab my mask and meet the rest of the time with them. And again, just a human decency, courtesy that we all extend each other. Obviously promoting from a health perspective, please, if you're feeling ill, stay at home, work from home. We don't want you coming in, right? And that's not just a COVID-19 thing. It's just again, another human decency, courtesy that we should extend to our colleagues, whether you have a cold, flu, whatever else might be the case. One ask of all of you is, although our case counts are relatively low relative to what they've been previously in our region, which led the nation, and specifically around the Omicron variant, which was around the winter season, December, January, where we're experiencing about 300 cases per week. We're now below 10 in our GSA facilities, which is great news. But I do need to ask of all of you is, if you do have a case, please inform your building management team. We want to make sure that we're aware of it so we can go ahead and initiate our protocols, which is we're continuing to clean after we are notified of instances and cases, if it's within a 72-hour window. And also we're informing other tenants of the incident and any location or floors that the individual may have traveled to. So we really depend on all of you as the tenants in the buildings to let us know. Also, let us know of your return to facilities. We're interested in knowing, not because we're checking in or saying no, but we're interested because we want to make sure that we're providing the support to you that you may need as you re-enter your workplaces. And then the last thing, and is a big ask of all of you, and I know is you're redesigning or rethinking of your space requirements. So please let us know what you're thinking in terms of any potential reductions, expansions, or renovations, so we can put it into our planning process as well. So one of the things that we're looking at is a potential turn-in of excess space that agencies no longer need as they're adapting more telework. And we want to make sure that we're good stewards of taxpayer money, that we're utilizing our space well, optimizing it. And in cases, we're going to look to bring in agencies as their leases expire into owned space. So the last thing I would want to do is renew a long-term lease for an agency, and then a bunch of space comes available open in our own facility, where we could have easily put that agency into that own facility. So again, this is kind of giving us the intel so we can improve our planning and ultimately our support to all of you, and ultimately getting the best value for the taxpayer. I also have Sherry Johnson with me. She's our service centers director. So she's heads all of our building management team and is really knows inside and out all of our facilities and all the work that they've been done to prepare for the return of our colleagues, other agencies to our facilities. So I'll turn it over to Sherry, just kind of mention some of those things that we've been doing to prepare for that day. Sherry?
Thank you, GC. So as employees and customers begin to return to our owned and leased facilities, I wanted to take this opportunity to share some high-level information on actions taken by our GSA building managers to support and ensure a safe reentry. GSA, through its building managers, have performed a number of tasks in our federally owned facilities to ensure the safety and health of employees and occupants. As GC mentioned, each asset is unique, and there is no standard response for all of our buildings. In an effort to communicate the key aspects of building operations to all of our agencies who are operating in our GSA facilities, you should have received a communication that was prepared and sent out outlining the actions taken by GSA to optimize the COVID safety measures at these locations. This was in or around mid to late March of this year, and it went to all of our agency POCs in our facilities. So some of the key safety measures include modifying building operations schedules to allow additional ventilation hours before and after scheduled occupancy hours, the initial and current minimum efficiency reporting value, which is known as MERV, filtration ratings for all of our air handling units have been verified and documented. Additionally, we've upgraded filters have been applied where it's applicable and within the current design specifications for those air handling units. We've also done complete domestic water system flushes when appropriate and necessary. Don't want to leave our lease facilities out. Additionally, GSA has notified lessors for all of our active GSA leases that are expected as landlords to follow current industry practices by considering application of the latest CDC guidelines concerning ventilation and water systems, similar to what we've done in our federal facilities. And lastly, GC also mentioned back on March 4th, CDC revised its guidance on mask wearing. So masks are only required to be worn in GSA controlled facilities when there's a high community level. Otherwise, they're not required unless there's a locality that imposes a more protective pandemic-related safety requirement. So we apply these protocols to all of the folks entering GSA facilities. So just so that you know, your building managers are following the CDC community level tracker every Thursday, Friday timeframe to make sure and update signage as appropriate if the transmission level changes. And we will continue to monitor and adhere to CDC and the Safer Federal Workforce Task Force guidance as we re-enter. Back to you, GC.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for all the info. I'll open it up to any questions. If anyone has anything for us, I'm more than happy to answer. All right. I don't see any, but obviously any of you may reach out to me individually. More than happy to help and assist in any way we can. Back to you, Kristen. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, GC and Sherry. Now we will go to Mr. Gonzalez. The floor is yours. Are you here?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Okay, yes.
Can you hear me now? All right, sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties earlier, so I had to get off and come back on. So I kind of missed the introduction portion of it, but I'll let you guys all know what, I have to say this, I had to follow Mr. Michel over here, and we've been, like he mentioned earlier, we've been coordinating with them since January, and our partnership has really grown in the past couple months, and I really appreciate Mr. Michel for all the work that he's done with us here at CISA. So for CISA, what we've been doing, and I guess the gist of this to talk about what we've been doing for the return to office. Am I correct? That's what we're here to talk about. So with CISA, what CISA's been doing is as of April 1st, we started returning back to office at 2 days of pay period. So we're not coming on full strength. They were doing it in phases per se. And for phase one, just employees if employees had been coming into the regional office, here in our regional offices in Las Colinas, if they've been going into the regional office, they just continue to go on in. The rest of phase one was for those who were at 100% telework, because prior to the pandemic, we were teleworking. We had a 50% telework policy in place for staff within the regional office. Within CISA Region 6, we have staff throughout the 5 states of Region 6, Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas. So all those folks, most of the folks that are scattered out are usually home duty stations, so they work out of their house for the most part. Our regional office here in Las Colinas, we have staff. We have about 20 staff that will work out of our regional office. And we were in telework status prior to we were doing 50% telework prior to the pandemic coming on or starting up in February of 2020, right? Yeah, it was 2020. That's been such a long time, we even forget, right? So we were at 50% telework. So everybody had telework agreements. Part of our policy is that everybody has to have a telework agreement, whether it's routine telework or situational telework. And all our staff within our region had both policies in place. One was the staff who are not within the regional office were situational telework, just in case something would happen, and they had to telework from another location. Their telework agreement was in place. And for the regional office, we always had routine telework for all our staff. So as we're phasing back in phase one, anybody who was on telework, 100% telework, is coming back into the office who has been 100% who are vaccinated, and they have a DHS system that tracks that. They're coming in back as of the last week was our first week back, and we're only doing it 2 days of pay period, as I mentioned. Phase two would be for any of those staff that are unvaccinated, and they would end up coming back as of May 9th. So on May 9th, some of our staff who are not vaccinated will start coming into the regional office. And then phase 3 would be for anybody who onboarded after the pandemic started and really doesn't have access to the regional office. Or they were at 100% telework. They were teleworking from a different location outside of our regional office or outside of the Metroplex per se. We're giving them till actually June 6th to come back to the regional office, to the locality here, so they can actually start coming back to the regional office. CISA has done a lot of work for the telework program and for the return to office. They've actually developed a SharePoint site within our interagency, within our network, that gives staff all the information when it comes to remote work, gives information when it comes to telework agreements, the directives. They updated the directive, they updated the remote work policies. They've updated all those. They've also have reasonable accommodation guidelines for all staff who has reasonable accommodations, for them to submit the reasonable accommodations there. And as GC stated, we are also following the COVID-19, the CDC. We go to the website. I personally go to the website every week, check the levels, and if they're good, then we just continue to work. We also have signage in our office. CISA sends signage to our office that we have. So in case we have to wear a mask, we go ahead and put the signage up. So we are doing the same, that everybody else is doing. Our mission prior to and during COVID, it didn't stop. We continue to press forward, even though we were in a virtual environment. We used the technology. We have Microsoft Teams that was available to us, and we became pretty proficient with Microsoft Teams and doing a lot of meetings through Teams. As a matter of fact, we had our all hands meeting. We had several all hands meetings with our regional staff, from everybody from Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas. All our staff were on the Teams meeting. We can create two all hands meetings during the pandemic to ensure that we pass information on to all our staff. Additionally, we have a PANS, what we call a personal accountability notification system that DHS has. We have access to it here in the regional office, that we actually, for any disaster or any hurricane that's coming in, or situations as we recently had some of the tornadoes that have come through Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas, we send out those PANS notifications to see for the status of our staff out there. Other than that, let me see what else I have here. I think that's about it, unless pending any questions. Again, since we're returning back to work, we're doing it slow and efficiently. We're not ripping off the Band-Aid and making everybody come 5 days a week. We still have our telework planned, and eventually we will be updating it back to more than just 2 days a week. And we'll probably here within our regional office, depending on what our regional director decides, but we'll probably go back to our old method of being 50% telework. We do have staff scattered throughout the Metroplex. So from Stevensville down to Midlothian, all across Mesquite, all across. So they come down to Las Colinas for the regional office. So other than that, pending any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Any questions for him? All right.
Nope.
Well,
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you so much. Up next, we have Mr. Olson with FPS.
Well, good afternoon. I apologize for getting out of the call a little bit earlier. I was having some technical difficulty. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. FPS has had a long-standing relationship with the FEBs across the country. I can think back to my time in New York City during 9/11, and how we worked with the FEB to bring people back into the federal workforce, which was quite a task. And then later on, Hurricanes Rita and Katrina, particular to this area, and all the hurricanes along the Southwest. So our partnership with the FEBs and communicating is longstanding, and it's a great partnership to have. Well, as you know, FPS is an operational organization, and we never really left. We never moved into a maximum telework type of structure. Our primary mission essential function is to provide protected security at FPS protected facilities. So can't really do that in a telework environment. Throughout this whole pandemic, we've continued to support our federal partners and officials, particularly GSA and their designated officials, as it relates to setting up screening procedures at the facilities and making sure that we're following CDC guidelines. We're also aligned with the Safer Facilities Task Force, and along with that, we make sure that we provide the most up-to-date post orders for our protective security officers at FPS protected facilities. So the only way we can do that is through our partnership with GSA and the designated officials at those facilities. We have a very engaged headquarters team that communicates a headquarters level in DC, and we've had the opportunity to work through, particularly as we constitute in certain locations, work through individualized procedures for tenant space. We have some tenants that want to continue with the masks.
Mr. Olson, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, my system rebooted. I apologize for that. So I'm not sure where I left off, but our headquarters team has been working at the national level to help individual agencies that want to continue with the mask mandates for their space, to set up measures for entry at their facilities that don't impact the rest of the tenants in buildings that have adopted a different type of entry procedure for their facilities. So as it relates to the FPS workforce, as I said, we never really left. And then prior to the pandemic, we had a very limited telework program for our non-law enforcement personnel. And over the last 2 years, we've learned how to do a lot of things via Teams and remotely and in a telework capability. We are continuing to use a telework posture for our non-law enforcement folks with a minimum in the office twice per pay period. And then we've also implemented remote work for certain employees as appropriate. I don't anticipate us ever bringing back everybody back to the office anytime soon. And we're continuing to learn. We're continuing to learn what the future of the workspace looks like for FPS as we come out of this pandemic. So, pending anybody's questions, that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Olson. Do we have any questions for him?
You bet.
All right, it looks like next we'll go to Mr. Tiarina.
Hey, good morning. Great information, and thanks for having me be on this call. Apologize that Janet Walker, our regional commissioner, is not available to be on the call, but she is actually out busy traveling, visiting as many, her and her deputy are trying to visit as many of our direct serving field offices across the region. We have 138 of those. And last Thursday, April the 7th, was a big day because these direct serving offices actually reopened. They were, for the last 2 years, were basically closed to the general public. They did offer some very, very limited walk-in service over the last 2 years, but last Thursday, the 138 in this region and those across the country reopened to the general public. Yeah, the expectation was that we'd have some big crowds, of course, being closed for the last 2 years, having some big surges. And so we appreciate the support that GSA in particular, and FPS in particular, and several others provided us. And for the most part, we saw some big crowds on Thursday. Things kind of thinned out on Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. Had very few incidents. Overall, I would say it was a successful day. We were able to serve everybody that showed up, especially in our urban office locations. We did have some big crowds. We'd have 200-300 people waiting when we'd open our doors at 9 o'clock. So it took the staff most of the day. People kept coming in to try to get everyone that showed up served by 4 o'clock or shortly thereafter. But again, things are seem to be manageable now. We do have limited staff in those field offices, even though we are open to the public. They are allowed to telework up to 2 days per week. And we're also following, of course, with social distancing. We can't have the capacity that we used to have. And so we are concerned about long wait times. And over the last 2 years, of course, we don't, none of us wanted to go through that, but it's kind of forced us to really look at on the services that we offer online, and we make great strides in providing services online that we previously didn't have, especially when it comes to Social Security card request and able to verify documents for most states online, and can take care of a lot of folks online without having to go into the office. So we're really promoting for folks to, if they can get the services online or call in our 800 number, to do so, because there could be a possibility with the limited staff and the number of folks in the offices of there being long waits. So another thing with our field offices, I know FPS mentioned, some agencies are still requiring the mask mandate, and we are in our field offices, as well as social distancing. So we appreciate the help there. And again, going back to GSA, we opened up our offices with very, very little issues. They worked hard, GSA support to make sure we had everything in place in those offices, of the signage, the communication with the lessors. Again, things went really, really well. We only have 2 offices that actually were unable to open because of pending construction, but GSA is working hard to get those projects finished up as quickly as possible. Again, that's for our field offices. Our regional office in Dallas, which is not a direct service facility, we're still teleworking 5 days a week, and we will continue to do so through September, as well as similar sites across the country. And we'll use this as an assessment of telework and determine where we'll go from there. So for the most part, everybody at 1301 Young Street, there are some exceptions, are still teleworking full time. So I'll pause there, stop rambling, and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tiarina. Are there any questions for him? All right. Well, last but not least, we have Captain Masudi.
Hi, everyone. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're at 12 o'clock. Will folks, are folks okay with staying on a few minutes after, or just want to make sure?
No, that's a great question. We are going over just a little bit. Everybody's okay? Okay, I see a few thumbs up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great to be here. So let me just show slides. Can you can you? I need to hear. Can you tell me if you see the slides?
We can't. Can you all see them? I can't see them just yet.
Oh, we need to wait. Hold on.
You see.
Not magical. I need to share them first.
Yeah, because I have it where you are able to. Let me see.
Yeah, you can't magically see them.
Okay, looks like it. There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, and now can you do one side?
Yep, we can see them. They look great.
All right, well, thanks so much. So I'm the Regional Health Administrator, and it seems like a lot of the points that I'm going to be covering has already been covered, so I'll maybe breeze through a lot of it. You'll have the slides, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So just quickly going over just some of these slides. These are, again, I used to be at CDC for a little over 20 years, so it's my go-to site. But these are just taken from yesterday from the COVID tracker. And as you can see, all of the indicators, which are cases, deaths, hospitalizations, are all pointing to the right direction. They're all going down. So we're very optimistic, at least cautiously optimistic, that we're all going in the right direction. But again, public health is still monitoring very closely. Overall, the vaccinations, as you can see, with at least one dose, 82%. I think one of the former speakers was mentioning something about the variant of Omicron, BA1 and BA2, and it's changing over time. And so what you can see, at least within our region, region 6, is that right now the number, as you can see in the circle, is the light pink is BA2, and the darker one is BA1. And for the most part, most of the country is either BA1 or BA2, and it's taken over the Delta, has basically taken the over Delta in terms of the strain, which is, again, it's to be expected. And these proportions are, it doesn't matter as much because the two are very similar in the sense that they're as infectious, but we seem to be at least finding that they're not as serious, again, in terms of the severity of the illness that they're causing. So a lot was mentioned so far of the CDC community levels, and so this is what it's coming up. This is CDC's latest attempt to try to show a better way of coming to communicating with the public. And so they've landed on what's best in terms of what they wanted to message to the community. And they've come up with these community levels, and that basically coming up with 3 different colors. And so based on, and it's based on 2 measures, and those are COVID-19 hospitalization admissions and percentage of occupied inpatient beds. And so overall, in essence, 96% of the US right now is at low level, as you can see, is pretty much all green. About a little less than 4% is at medium, and less than 6% is at high. Less than 4%, I missed, so 6% at medium. And then for our region, which is region 6, is basically we have 0 counties actually within our region that have high community level. And basically talking about that low is limited impact on healthcare system, low levels of severe disease. And with it being that, again, getting vaccinated, boosted, same message, getting tested if sick. The only difference being is that with the medium and the high is that has to do if a potential at increased risk, talk to your healthcare provider about wearing a mask, or wearing a mask in public indoor settings, including schools. So it has to do with the use and wearing of a mask or respirator, having to do with the medium or high risk. And this is another good website that has been put together most recently. It's covid.gov. And this was due to a lot of questions and concerns that have been raised. The White House had put this out, and this is a screenshot from it. So it has a go-to site for questions about masks, treatments, where one can look to get anything you want to learn about monoclonal antibodies or any of the therapeutics that are available, vaccines, and then also for testing, whether or not how to get testing for home or test to stay programs. Again, this is the bottom of the page, which I couldn't get everything on one, but again, parts of it where you can then click on for symptoms and care, at-home testing that you can apply, and how you might be able to apply for it and getting it, and then also information about general rules and restrictions on travel. So again, here are ways that you can go to actually do the checking of the community levels. Very simple. The link for the website, www.cdc.gov/coronavirus, and using the county check, as you can see, selecting the state and the county, depending on where you are, Dallas County, Tarrant County, or El Paso, or any of the other particular areas where you might be. That would be the place where you would do. And based on that, here's what it would show is that Dallas right now is showing that it is low. What happens is that the data are updated and by every Thursday. And so this is as of April 7th. So these data were updated as of last week. So if we come back to this Thursday in a couple of days, it will be refreshed and the date will be updated accordingly. And then this is what it would look if you were in Pulaski County, Arkansas. And since we don't have any necessarily in the high in our region, so this is what would have been for if you were, say, for example, in South Dakota. These would be particularly, as I had said, about what the recommendations would be. Again, as we had all talked about the whole transition, again, these are just for HHS employees, but again, the messaging is the same. Employee assistance programs. All of the resources are available for employees and for supervisors. These are all hyperlinks that are available that would then be able to use for clicking, as well as the phone number available for that site as well. And again, all of us have to remember to, as we get back to work, what to wear, what shoes to wear, and so on. So that will be the hardest thing to try to get used to. And then this is at least looking at in terms of mental health, which is something really, really important and to consider as we think through about getting back to work.
Captain Masudi, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Did we use the slides? Did we lose the slides or?
Yeah, we lost the slides. I think the connection, because even on my end, the connection is a little glitchy.
Let's see if I go to this. So can you see the slide now?
Yeah, it looked like they're coming back. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So now you see the slide that what I was saying about LPM, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, all right, perfect. So that's the, so this is the slide that would show whatever I was showing, which was on the HHS site, all of these in terms of availability for the hybrid work environment and transitioning to a hybrid work environment. And all of the toolkits are available for other employees as well in other departments on the who are not at HHS. So, and that's available via the OPM's website. And again, last in conclusion, again, for HHS, the guidance that we're using, Carla was saying that yes, we are using the CDC recommendations. And again, as it was mentioned, CDC's Regional 6 office is low as of the 12th. And again, this is just general information, very clear, getting vaccinated, and just remembering washing hands and covering your cough and sneeze. I mean, those are just general hygiene and public health messaging, and getting tested and staying home if you're feeling sick. And again, masks are not required. And again, I put in parentheses here at this time. Again, these are fluid times, and that it may change, but that's why it's important for us all to monitor and just keep an eye on what the community levels are periodically. And I put the 2 links on the websites, cdc.gov/COVID-19 or covid.gov. Again, with that, I thank you, and I'll stop and see if any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Captain Masudi? All right. I think at this time, we will turn it over to Julia Lothrop for remarks on the executive order and the adjournment. Thank you all so much.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. I just want to thank all of our fabulous speakers today. It's so informative and really helpful to get our thinking caps on for some of us that hadn't really thought about some of the things that were mentioned. So I really appreciate that. And Mayron, I just want to say that I expected to have more cat parity in your pictures and your slideshow. So next time, add some cats. So, but anyway, thank you all again. I'm sorry for I think the weather is interfering with many of our internet services today. So on September 9th, 2021, the president issued Executive Order 14043 that required COVID-19 vaccination for all federal employees. And then a lawsuit followed challenging the vaccine mandate. The lawsuit sought an injunction against the mandate, which was granted by a lower court. The Biden administration appealed that decision, and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals just on Monday ultimately decided with the administration. So the injunction has been in place since January, but as a result of the new court decision, enforcement of the vaccine mandate could resume again, but we're waiting further information. So we just wanted to provide you with the most current information that we have from OPM. On April 7th, a message went out to federal agencies about the executive order, and essentially the Safer Federal Workforce Task Force has given guidance to agencies that says federal agencies must continue to take no action to implement or enforce the COVID-19 vaccination requirement until further notice that the injunction has been lifted. So just know that we will stay tuned. We will have more information for you as we have it. And Crystal is going to put in the chat an email address. So if you have additional information or questions for the Safer Federal Workforce Task Force, you can ask them directly. So are there any other questions for the meeting today? Okay, well, I just thank everybody for your participation. We will get the link to this and share it out so that additional federal agencies and members can view it. And if there are no other questions, I want to thank you for this important information. It was really enlightening and informative. Thank you, Crystal, for our fearless leader today. And now we will adjourn our meeting. So thank you all and have a great rest of your day and stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks, everybody.